So in this video, we will be working on the sidebar. By the end of this video, your sidebar should look something like this. Okay, so first, let's create a new file called sidebar.html. And let's create that in our partials folder. And in this file, for now, we'll just have a placeholder. And we'll say this is the sidebar. Save that. And then we want to include the sidebar in our archive.html file. But before we are going to include that, let's wrap this whole thing in a div. And the reason we're wrapping this in a div is because we want to create a grid layout of 2 columns. So this is going to be one of the column. And another column is going to be our sidebar. So we'll use the partial command to include our sidebar.html. And make sure you pass in the context so that you can have access to all the variables in sidebar.html. Now we have to go to the base of .html, which is in our default folder. We need to add another div. And we'll add a class to this div called grid container. And we'll be adding some CSS styling to this grid container. Within it, we want to move our main block into it. Now save that and go to main.css. And let's add some CSS styles for the grid container. Display is going to be the grid. And then the grid template is going to be columns. And first column will take up 70% of the space. Second, it's just going to be 1 FR. Grid column gap for REM. If you save this, run your server again. Or if you already have that running, then your page should refresh. We have the sidebar right next to our main body. Let's go back to VS Code. In order to start changing the sidebar, let's first configure our taxonomy, because that's what we're going to be showing in our sidebar. It's going to be tags and categories. So if we go to our config file, we will create a new parameter called taxonomy. And under taxonomies, we'll have 2 taxonomies: category and tags. Okay, once we have this, then in our posts, we will start adding some tags. We'll call this one just tag 1, and then categories. We'll have cat 1. Copy this and paste it in a few more posts. And we'll call this tag 1, and then we'll add an extra tag called tag 2. And then this one called cat 2. And then we'll just leave this one to be tag 1. So now we have a few tags and categories in a few of our posts. If we go back to the web browser, and in the URL, if we type in tags, then you'll see that we're still displaying the posts. And the reason for this is because we need to make a few changes in the archive.html. So let's go back to archive.html. At the very top, currently pages is always set to pages that's in the main section. And remember, currently our main section by default is the posts directory. In this case, we need to use an if and else statement. But let's first declare a variable called pages, and we'll set this to just equal to the pages. And then from there, we'll check if it's home. So if it's the home page, then pages will be whatever it's in the main section. And we'll end the statement here. Once I refreshed, yeah, so it failed, saying that page render of taxonomy failed. Okay, let's go back to VS Code. I see the error. I forgot the colon here. So the first time when you assign a variable, it looks like you need a column. For the second time, you don't need a column here. So now if I save that and run again, there we go. Now we're in the tags page, which lists different tags. If I click on tag 1, then you'll see that it lists all the posts in tag 1. And if I have tag 2, that's everything in tag 2. Then same thing with category. Cat 1 and cat 2. If you click on one of these pages, then this would still direct you to this is single. We haven't done anything to the singles.html file yet. Now let's go to sidebar.html and start making edits. First, let's assign .site.params to a variable. And then we'll create the tag aside and have the class to be margin bottom -5 so that this creates some space at the bottom of your sidebar. First, we'll define the tags limit. This variable is the number of tags that is allowed in the sidebar. So to do this, we have the default keyword. And the default keyword takes in 2 parameters. First value is the default value. In this case, I set it to 30. And the second key is your input. And in this case, my input is coming from the config.yaml file. And I am specifically looking for the name number of tags shown. In this case, I don't have a variable defined called number of tags shown in our config file. Therefore, the tag limit is going to be 30. But if I do want my own input, what I can do is go to the config file, and under params, we can copy this variable name, paste it here, and then set a value to it, say 20. So now the tag limit is going to be 20. Next, we will use the range keyword to iterate through all the taxonomies. And in our case, we only have 2 taxonomies, category and tag. In this case, each taxonomy is going to be a key value pair. The key is going to be the name of the taxonomy, which is tags or categories. And the corresponding value is going to be the actual tags or categories that you've defined in the formatter. Next, we'll use an if statement to check if the value is greater than 0. If so, that means we do have taxonomy. And we'll use a h2 tag to define the key, which is the name of the taxonomy. And then the actual value of the taxonomy is going to be in the nav tag. So this line of code is getting all the tags or categories that we want. So Hugo uses the pipe to do chained functionalities. So the first function right here, values.byCount, basically sorts all the tags or categories defined in our formatter by the number of count. So basically this line of code gets the first 20 tags or categories. And after that, we will iterate through those 20 tags or categories. And when we are iterating through them, we're going to create an A tag to display the name of the tag or category and also the count of it. And as you can see, the name is displayed in the uppercase. And also this right here, href, is how you will construct the link to the tag or the category list. And then here is also the rest of the HTML code. Okay, now if we save this and go back to the web browser, then this should be something that you see. And as you can see, the category or tags name followed by the number of count. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is change the style in the sidebar. So let's go back to VS Code and go to our main.css file. So the first thing that we're going to do is the sidebar dash links. We're going to change this class so that the display is flex, and then it has flex wrap, so that if the list gets long, then we can wrap it. And we'll have some gap of 0.3 rem. Next is the tag link. Same thing, we'll make the display to be flex and then the gap to be 0.3 rem. Next, we want to make the site responsive. To do that, we will set the media to change the grid container to be a single column, so that if you do this, you shrink your web page, the taxonomies will be showing up at the bottom. Next, we'll change how the buttons look. To do that, scroll all the way down, and this is where we're going to change the Bootstrap buttons. First thing is to change the button primary. I'm not going to explain what each of these CSS line means. If you do want to know, I definitely recommend just writing these line by line and then do a save to see how the web page changes. And then the next one is the button underscore tally. Change that as well. The final result of the changes are like this. One last thing, we'll add the margin to be auto. Now this is what the final CSS style will look on the entire page.